Hello, Internet. Kyle here. Seems like we're all stuck at home a bit more than normal these days. The grocery stores are all out of bread, sometimes even yeast. Luckily, there's a workaround. I'm going to show you how to make my sourdough bread. Now, I love baking. It's a rewarding hobby. But people think baking is daunting. It's actually easy and can be a lot of fun too. Bread is a great place to start. It's a simple recipe, just requires flour, water, salt, and leaven. Leavening is the ingredient that creates those air pockets that we like in bread. It can be done with baking powder, baking soda, yeast, or in our case, sourdough starter. What is a sourdough starter? A sourdough starter is just flour and water that you leave out and let it ferment. The water that's in there breaks down that flour and exposes those sugars, and the wild yeast that's already in flour can start eating on that and create two byproducts. One is acids, which create that soury flavor, and also carbon dioxide, which creates that open, airy crumb that we love so much about bread. You can find a lot of resources on the internet about how to make your own sourdough starter, like I did, or you can go to your local bakery and pick some up. I'll put some links in the description for you. Recipes often call for a fed or mature starter, sometimes called a levain. This is usually just equal parts starter, flour, and water. Our recipe begins with this. I usually feed my unfed starter right before I go to bed, leaving it out on the counter overnight with some plastic wrap over it. The starter needs time to feed on the newly added flour. 5 to 6 hours can be enough, or until it doubles in size. We mainly are just looking for some activity, like bubbles. Here I use 50 grams of starter, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and 50 grams of water, yielding 150 grams of fed or mature starter in the morning. Now I'd like to note that I am doing all my measurements by weight. It's easier, more accurate, and less messy. I highly recommend you get a food scale if you can. However, if you don't own a scale, or just prefer to do recipes by volume, I'll put both methods in the description. Okay, so let's go and start by making our autolyse. What is an autolyse? Well, usually all these recipes just require all these things going together. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna combine all those elements except the sourdough starter and let them mingle together. 500 grams of all-purpose flour, about 10 grams of salt. Just kind of stir that up with my hands. Don't worry, I washed them. Now, 350 mils of tap water. The idea here is to make a shaggy dough. Seems about right. So put a lid on it. If you don't have a lid, just cover it with a plate or some plastic wrap. This sucker here needs to sit for at least 30 minutes to an hour. I think it's been about 30 minutes. So now, we're gonna put our sourdough starter. Oh, look at all that activity. Now, if I was using my food scale, which I'm not since I already pre-measured this, I might have a bigger batch of this that I'll be using, and then I could just spoon out the amount I need, and then I have leftover starter. It's very important that when you're doing this, you don't use all of your starter. This is the levain, because the levain is referring to the fed starter that you're using in your bread. We're gonna go ahead and spoon this into here, and we're gonna mix this for about 5 minutes or so. Just use one hand, that way you always have a clean hand if you need to go do something else. Poke into the dough, and then I just start doing these twist motions. This is at least what I like to do. Now don't be afraid to get all sticky. It's okay, just keep going. So you can see as I pull this, it just wants to kind of break apart. What we're doing is we're working the dough in such a way that we're developing gluten. We're trying to take all the proteins that are inside of this. As we twist and stretch and everything, we are chaining those together more. The more you do that, the more you get that bread feel. But there's a trade-off. The more we let this sit, the more we get that activity like we saw in our sourdough starter. Develop those bubbles. As I push in this, I'm squeezing all those bubbles and popping them. So it's a trade-off. You want those bubbles, but you also want to develop the gluten. And so we're going to continue this process for a while. Oh yeah, this is already starting to feel a little bit better. Essentially what we're going to be doing is a stretch and fold. Usually you grab the bottom like this, pull, and if I continually see it breaks off, that's okay. Eventually it's going to stick. Quick motion of that, where I pull, stretch, and lay over like that. We turn the bowl. Notice how sticky it is. It wants to keep sticking in my hand. Rotate 90 degrees again. Just keep this. One tip with pretty much anything with bread making is do it all with confidence. Okay. You see it's still really sticky, but it's come together. Definitely looks different than the shaggier dough. See how it still wants to stick to my hand when I pull it away like that? That's okay.
That's what I would expect in this step. So, what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna leave it be. Notice my hand's sticky, it's okay. We're gonna be able to wash it. Pick up the lid and cover that. I gotta wash my hands. So we have all of our ingredients are mixed together. We have our dough. It is sitting. This is what you call the bulk ferment. So in the course of now to 5 hours from now, it's gonna rest. 15 minutes, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do another stretch and fold. 15 minutes after that, come back, try again. Then maybe 30 minutes after that. Do what works for you. And that's what I love about these bread recipes. It's completely flexible. It's gonna be great no matter how you do it. Ready to make some bread out of this. So you want to carefully get this on the countertop. That trusty scraper that we have, and we're just gonna scrape out all of this nicely. Now, we didn't put any flour down, so it's gonna want to stick. No big deal, because we have this scraper. The scraper, when you push under, take out, see it wants to stick to it, but we can use this to our advantage because I'm gonna stick in there and then pull around, and I can keep this up, and eventually I'll get kind of a tight ball. Yeah, this is looking great. Okay, looks real nice. So then we can take that bowl that we just used, we can simply put it over, like so. And let it rest for 30 more minutes.
So after 30 minutes, the dough should have flattened out a bit. Just form it back into a ball using some of the same motions we did before. Next, we are going to proof our bread. To ensure it doesn't flatten out again, we just need to put it in something a little more bread-shaped. To do this, we're putting the dough into some floured bannettons, which are just fancy bread baskets. You can totally use a bowl with a floured tea towel if you'd like. The dough needs to proof for at least 2 to 3 more hours at room temperature, or you can put it in the fridge overnight. Make sure you cover or bag up your dough to ensure it doesn't dry out. The proofing can be as flexible as you need, but if you prefer that more tangy sourdough flavor, it's usually best to proof it overnight. In the morning, I start the bread baking process by preheating my oven at 500 degrees Fahrenheit with the Dutch oven inside. I actually prefer to use tagine, which is a North African cooking dish. You can use whatever works, just as long as the cookware can handle the high temperature. I especially like to enclose the bread with a lid while baking because it generates better oven spring. Oven spring refers to the steaming process that increases the size of the bread. If you have any questions on additional methods, leave them in the comments below. You want to get your oven and cookware scorching hot, so I recommend leaving your cookware in the oven after preheating for at least another 20 minutes. When ready, carefully take the bottom of your baking dish out and lightly flour. Now we are going to put our dough in. The top of the bread will be at the bottom of the banneton, so be sure to flip it out as I did. Doing this will make it look better. Now if you want to get fancy, you can score your bread with a razor blade or sharp knife. A quick, long cut across the top will do. The point of this is to control where the bread breaks on top as it expands, and it also makes it look good too. Place the bread in the oven with the lid back on. 20 minutes later, remove the lid and then set the temperature to 475 Fahrenheit, baking for another 15 minutes or until golden brown. Once done, carefully pull the bread out and place on a cooling rack. Try to resist the urge to cut it open and let it set for at least 1 hour. This will help the crust and crumbs set. And you guys know what to do next. You just toast it, butter it, and eat it. It's bread. Do what you want. Thank you so much for tuning into my first baking video. I had so much fun making it, and I'd love to make more. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything you'd like to see me try and make. You can also bring the rest of the band in sometime. Also, thank you so much to those that have been listening to our music through this time. Put out a new single called All Will Be Well. Please go check it out. You can find it anywhere where you find your music. I'll see you guys next time.